This video is sponsored by Ren, but more on that later. Hello guys, gals and empals, and welcome to the very sunny side of trans representation. When one thinks of a show that has a good trans character in it, a trans woman who manages to be more than just a punchline or an object for derision and mockery, I'm not sure that their mind would go to It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's Always Sunny has quite a reputation amongst sitcoms for being raucous and aggressive and over the top with the way that it presents people and situations, especially in the earlier seasons when we didn't get to see the more sensitive side of the storytelling they could pull off. But as someone who is a massive fan of the series, who has watched it all the way through multiple times, what you find quite often is that minorities are given a great treatment within it in a way that is uniquely different to the other sitcoms of the time that it can be compared to. Obviously, I had a big video talking about How I Met Your Mother recently, which went heavily into the various ways in which that show poorly handled trans people, and blatantly engaged in heavy transphobia as a consistent bit. And How I Met Your Mother is a great comparison for when we talk about what It's Always Sunny does right, both with its characters and with the way that it brings in and deals with both trans people and trans topics. And so that is what we're going to do in this video. We're going to showcase the positive side of making a trans character, the good example for future screenwriters to copy if they want to have a comedy that doesn't just put down or shove trans people into convenient stereotypes and boxes. With that stated, the first topic I want to dive into is that aforementioned concept of the way that It's Always Sunny handles its main characters. So the first major point to lay out here that is very important when it comes to understanding the success that It's Always Sunny achieves with regards to incorporating various facets of modern life without coming across as bigoted or encouraging punching down on minorities is the way in which it positions its main characters within the story. While a normal sitcom, such as Friends, or How I Met Your Mother, or Two Broke Girls, or Sex and the City, or whatever you might insert in that place, generally follows a consistent theme of the main characters, the group of people that are central to the plotline, and who you, as the audience, are supposed to root for and relate to in order to keep those ratings up, are the protagonists in a classical sense. By that, I mean that they are treated as heroes, in the way that we always see their side of things, and we always get the idea that they are the good guys, the ones who are in the right, who want to succeed and do well because, heck, we even start to think of them as if they were our own friends. That was actually one of the core things that went into these close group of friends style sitcoms, that they try to abuse the way that we work as social animals and effectively make our brain think about them as if they were our actual friends. Of course I want to know what happened to Joey and his new acting gig. Joey is my friend, and this is very important to him, so it's very important to me. Therefore I should keep watching. Oh, Ted let another girl get away because of his ridiculous romantic streak. What a wild card. I sure hope he figures it out eventually though, because I'm really rooting for him as my friend. But these are fictional characters, whose struggles and lives are made up by writers and okayed by studio executives in an attempt to get people to keep watching their channel. And oftentimes this demand that the characters have to be someone that you side with at the end of the day. Like, they're allowed to mess up, but ultimately you have to come around to thinking, it all works out, and they're good at heart, all's well that ends well, is a huge flaw when the characters are written in a way that has them act out things that are totally neurotic, or abusive, or sexual harassment-y. I don't think that's a word. Anyway, a surprising amount of sitcom characters have ended up being completely naked in front of others who did not consent to that, and we are meant to just laugh it off as a mistake or as a funny joke. It's not. Don't do this, especially even to your friends. That is sexual harassment. They did not consent to see your genitalia. Don't do it. But in comparison to that desperate need from other sitcoms for you to ultimately consider the group of friends to be the good guys, to be alright at the end of whatever episode it is you are watching, It's Always Sunny takes a very different approach. From the start of the very first season, we are consistently told that under no circumstances should we root for or be supportive of these people. they are openly stated as narcissistic and destructive monsters who are constantly looking for a quick and easy way to achieve what they want, at the expense of each other and random strangers. And that's part of the charm of the show. It makes it very clear that we are not meant to be laughing with the gang and being on their side, we're meant to be laughing at them, and acknowledging how these terrible people have been created by a variety of factors that were sometimes out of their control, but they make no attempt to become better people or fix themselves, so we can't really care beyond that. And this doesn't mean that the gang isn't allowed soft moments or moments of relatability. In fact, their flaws as people and the failed way in which they attempt to navigate a world with whatever brand of shittiness they bring is a refreshing view of these people. More than any other sitcom, these people feel less like demographic targeting characters, and seem like they reflect some of the worst of us all.
Okay, and I have feelings. Of course I have feelings. I have big feelings, okay? And it hurts. Okay, so that's why I hate Valentine's Day, and that's why I put anthrax in the box.
And when they have their moments in the sun, the small moments of pure personality, like when Mac came out as gay to his father in a prison at the end of season 13, by performing this emotional and raw dance about his experience, where you can really feel all the awkward ways that his gayness has interacted with his extreme religious tendencies and desperate desire to perform masculinity, or when Charlie has a breakdown at the end of season 14 while trying to drag his father's body up a mountain, bemoaning all the ways that he felt like his father let him down by never being in his life.
You never picked me up from school. You didn't read me bedtime stories. You didn't carry me on your shoulders. You didn't bounce me on me. You weren't there. And I needed you. I needed you there.
In those moments, we see past the shitty people who ruin their own lives, and we see these humans who are messed up, and in some way they sort of know it. But ultimately, what we see after those moments is that the gang continues to do what they do. Continues to be assholes because the show doesn't act as if one moment of human realness is enough to make someone a better person, and it doesn't demand that you let all their actions slide because of it. It's Always Sunny is far smarter than How I Met Your Mother or Friends because it recognises that its characters are bad people, are flawed, and it lets you as the audience know that they are. It doesn't try to play this awkward game of showing them do terrible things and then hand wave it away or have a laugh track over it so that you can keep maintaining this idyllic view of your fake TV friend group. This idea that the gang from It's Always Sunny are not good people, that each one from Dee to Dennis to Charlie to Frank to Mac has in their own way contributed to and helped to bring each other down to this level of animals scrabbling in the mud and filth of the modern world, is an essential one when it comes to understanding how the show manages to present minorities in a positive way without it feeling like a 2D cardboard cutout of representation. It is in that interaction with the main characters who we know to be terrible that we are allowed to see these minorities as better people. As any time the gang does or says something wrong or bigoted, we're not on their side. We're on the side of the people who are laughing at them or dealing with their shit. Making your main characters the lowest of the low and bringing the audience in on that allows the supporting characters to react to them without it feeling misplaced. And nowhere is this more present than when we view the trans character from It's Always Sunny and the way that she interweaves with the gang's stories. But before I can move on to the main topic of this video, I need to quickly get your attention and talk about the sponsor of this video itself. That's right, a core theme of It's Always Sunny is the way in which the gang engages with and thinks about climate change in recent seasons, and they do it in their classically poor manner. And if you want to do better than the gang, as I'm sure we all do, then Wren is the perfect resource for you. Wren is a service that offers you a way to easily calculate your carbon footprint and find ways to offset that. Whether that is through making essential changes to your lifestyle and things you might not think of, or by subscribing to a monthly plan that sends your money towards projects and initiatives that help to combat the impacts of climate change, Wren is a great tool for anyone looking to help change the way that we approach the climate crisis. Now, if you're a member of my audience, you might be thinking, well, shouldn't the main impetus for this be on governments and corporations and not me? And you are sort of right there. But ultimately, making these changes at home and helping to change the way that we think and act around climate change is an essential step to inputting those changes on a larger scale. Beyond that point, I can also safely say that me and my friends scoured Ren, and we all came back pretty pleased with the way they conduct their business, so I can happily give it my seal of approval, something which does not come easy for any company. If all that sounds like it might be right up your alley, then you can check out the unique link in the description, or the pinned comment below that, or the thing on the screen right now, with the knowledge that the first 100 people to sign up using this will get an extra 10 trees planted in your name. And I know we all love trees. Who doesn't love trees? So go and check that out. Anyway, back to the video, and on to talking about Carmen, the best trans character I have seen in pretty much any sitcom. So Carmen is the main character discussion for this entire piece, and is the only trans character with any representation within It's Always Sunny. Thankfully, it is done in such a good way that I honestly don't really have any problems with it being such. So how exactly is she well done, you might be asking? Well, we have 4 episodes involving Carmen, and each one develops and goes into her character in a way that keeps adding more and more depth and intricacies that showcase a real desire by the writers to, actually have a trans character seem like a real person. Our first introduction to Carmen is in Season 1 Episode 4, titled Charlie Has Cancer, where she is introduced as a romantic character for Mac, who flirts with her. Dennis then reveals that she is transgender and that she has a penis, and all that confuses Mac, but ultimately the way that she flatters his muscles apparently completely negates that as an issue for him. She appears throughout the episode, and it is shown that Mac is ashamed of his connection to Carmen in a romantic fashion, and Dennis especially contributes to this by making such a big deal about it.
Just getting it removed.
So what?
Just putting in my time, so that afterwards
Gross,
I'll
dude.
be first.
Gross.
Mac, however, continues to see Carmen, continue to date her with the intention that she will sleep with him when she finally gets the surgery, despite her promising no such thing at all. We then see her out in public with Mac on a date that ends poorly when Mac punches her in the face because she tapped him on the shoulder. Nearby witnesses then get angry at the fact that he punched a woman, to which he responds over and over that she has a penis, therefore she's not really a woman, until he runs off. Now, there are some moments of note in this episode that I do want to discuss. Firstly is the way that we initially introduced to Carmen. This follows a somewhat standard style of trans character in sitcoms of this era, in that she's introduced and then it is suddenly sprung on the character that she's actually a dude the whole time, even including the T-slur for good measure because that was how low the bar was at the time. However, It's Always Sunny does have that aforementioned thing that I discussed in the previous chapter, wherein the characters are not ones that we feel sympathetic towards or feel like we should emulate or copy in our daily lives. In this way, when they use the T-word or engage in transphobia, it is coming from these terrible people who we have no motivation to treat as better than this, and the show makes no attempt to apologise for who they are. Glenn Howerton, who co-created the show and plays Dennis, actually had something to say on this in an interview for Gentleman's Quarterly in 2018, specifically saying that in the first couple of seasons we referred to a character as the T-word. Personally, I wasn't aware of the power of that word at the time. Now, granted, I think one of the reasons why we get away with it, or why it makes sense, is because the characters are awful people. They're not celebrated for it, and they always lose, and they always get their comeuppance. And in some ways, he is right. They can get away with their main characters being bigots because the show never claims that they are good people despite that. However, beyond that specific aspect, the way in which Carmen responds to Mac questioning her on her transness is of certain interest.
Excuse me, bro, can you give me a second? Thanks. Is that a penis in your pants?
Yeah.
You lied to me.
No, I didn't. You lied to me. You don't work out? Please, I've seen you at the gym. You're ripped.
No, don't turn this around. Wait.
Carmen flips this around on Mac so well, and in such an interesting manner that makes it clear she never tricked or deceived anybody. She is given the chance and the ability to defend herself, something that not many sitcoms allow trans women to do. Alongside that, the way that the show handles Mac punching Carmen is also another element of this getting his comeuppance. He tries to defend himself by saying it's okay because she is actually a dude, and in response the witnesses call him out for a hate crime and then chase him off.
Oh, no, it's a dude. Yeah, she has a penis, so it's okay.
Dude, is that a hate crime?
Shit, yeah, it's a hate crime!
This reinforces the idea that Carmen is not in the wrong here, that Mac is very clearly the one who messed up, and other people are very comfortable telling him that, and then making it clear that that isn't okay. This is our first introduction to Carmen as a person, and while the gang definitely treats her very poorly, especially Mac and Dennis, the show makes it clear from both Carmen and from the regular people around that their behaviours are not normal and not okay. Did I mention that this episode came out in 2005, right around the same time that How I Met Your Mother was having their main characters making jokes about trans people as if it was the height of comedy? Yeah, a real interesting comparison in how both shows handle trans people. Almost like one of them actually seemed to care about showing a trans person and giving them motivation and character in a way that doesn't dehumanize them. Wild stuff. Anyways, the next time we see Carmen is 2 seasons later in Season 3's Episode 10, Mac is a serial killer, where the others in the gang are suspicious of Mac because he is being all shady and secretive, hiding his activity. We find out very quickly that it is because he has re-engaged romantic relations with Carmen and doesn't want his friends to find out, in case it reflects poorly on him. Something that hits a little bit too close to home, like oof, ouch, that's a bit real for a lot of trans women dating. There's a whole scene where Mac gets super uncomfortable around the whole notion of the penis of it all, while Carmen just seems to be getting more and more done with his shit, which is honestly fair enough to her.
Why not?
Because if you're... Oh, God. Situation down there.
You mean my penis?
Well, you don't have to say it out loud.
I told you, I'm getting rid of it.
I know, but when, dude? I feel like I've been putting a lot of time in here.
Soon.
This all comes to a head when Carmen pushes Mac by saying that she wants to go out and do normal dates instead of constantly hanging around inside the house, a perfectly reasonable request, to which Mac responds by making it clear he just doesn't want people to think that he is dating a trans woman and that she should keep it quiet because of her condition. To which she immediately breaks up with him and ends it because Carmen is clearly someone who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to stand up for herself. This episode doesn't have Carmen appear again after this, however the gang attempts to quite violently get Mac to confess to being a serial killer, to which he instead exclaims that he is just sleeping with, in his words, the T-word. The gang is then stuck for a second on how exactly he is able to sleep with a trans woman, expressing some disgust with the idea, before then moving on very quickly to how him not being a serial killer is a letdown.
Ew.
Oh.
Oh, I don't even know how that works. Oh, God.
It's complicated. There's
Did I
a lot
thought you
of-
thought that was-
She tapes it back.
Oh,
Oh my God.
Sometimes I'm up against. I've been reading up and...
Wait. Dude. Wait, so you're not the serial killer?
No!
Yet again, the gang are not good people, their reactions to a trans woman is no indictment on her, I don't really need to dig into that again. However, the interesting thing here from this episode with regards to Carmen is the way that she responds to Mac and his desire to keep the relationship going as long as nobody knows about it. There are plenty of examples of this situation happening in the real world, of cis men who are so wrapped up in worrying about how they might be interpreted if it's found out they are attracted to a trans woman that makes them act out in secretive or hostile manners towards trans people. And the show giving Carmen the moment of challenging Mac on this, and then ending it when it's clear that Mac is too much of a coward to treat her better, is another aspect of It's Always Sunny building this trans woman as someone who is independent, who is her own person and has her own wants and desires, and understands when she is being mistreated and is strong enough to end that. It's one of the things that consistently comes back with Carmen, that she is a trans woman who is not scared of being one, who is not afraid of admitting parts of herself, and then turns it around into an indictment of the people who would take issue with her. Something that I would want from any trans character and for any trans person. Now, our penultimate appearance of Carmen is another few seasons later, in Season 6's Episode 1, Mac Fights Gay Marriage. Yeah, I bet you might be able to guess where this one is going, as Mac reconnects with Carmen only to find out that she has gone through the surgery, in a thoroughly weird scene where he expresses just an odd amount of interest in her tuck job.
How you doing? Wow, you look great. Sweet camel toe. That's a good tuck job. You have it taped back there?
No,
That's good.
It's actually gone.
This is great to Mac, as he originally intended for her to sleep with him immediately after she got it, only he now finds out that she has a husband, who loves her and has been with her since some point last time we saw her. Mac then immediately declares that he is against gay marriage because that would mean that Carmen can't be married, something that nobody else in the gang gets because, as they say, it's a guy and a girl, how is that gay marriage?
She got her dick cut off, and she married a dude.
Oh, that's great. Congratulations to her.
No, that is not great.
No?
That is a gay marriage.
I got a question for you. One's a girl, one's a guy.
Yeah.
And how is that gay?
It becomes very clear quickly that Mac only cares about being against gay marriage because he's annoyed that Carmen didn't message him instead. The guy who hid that they were dating and treated her like shit, such as immediately calling her the T-word, wow, what a shocker that she didn't message him back. But in his selfish and narcissistic state, he does a classic thing that Mac does in It's Always Sunny, using his religious background only when it's convenient for him and his goals. Mac then goes back to the gym with his Bible, attempts to convince Carmen and Nick that they are in a gay marriage and they need to break it off, which goes about as poorly as one would expect, and Mac completely fails, leaving defeated as his arguments are basically completely useless and based in nothing. Carmen then also has to deal with Frank and Charlie grilling her on which one of them would be the woman in their marriage as they are intending on getting fake married to obtain the benefits from it, where she finds herself completely exasperated by the inane and ridiculous questions that they ask. And that is her involvement in the episode. Now, as for what we can take away from this with regards to a good representation, there are some classics that have already been established, such as Carmen consistently standing up for herself and not allowing others to walk over her, and shutting down attempts to go after her marriage by Mac.
Will receive the due penalty for their perversion. Word of the Lord.
Okay, what is it you're trying to say, Mac?
Alongside further cementing the idea that the gang are the bad people here, and the ones that we are rooting against. More than that, though, it brings up two interesting new things that we have not seen in relation to this trans character. Firstly, her finding a person who loves her for who she is, and is willing to defend her against people who make a problem about it in Nick. A person who is also shown to take no shit from Mac when he challenges the usage of the Bible to go after Carmen and himself and their marriage.
So you saying you gonna whoop my black ass with a rod for as long as you like, and as long as I get up after a day or two, we all good. That's what you telling me?
No, I wouldn't whoop on you with anything, whether you were my slave or not. It's just, that doesn't really pertain anyway, because that section is not from the same time.
Oh, really? Well, what time is your section from, Mac?
Secondly, we also see the way that the gang generally only cares about any minority stuff when it would benefit them. This fits into the aforementioned idea of them being terrible people, but it also builds into this notion in a slightly different way, as you see the rest of the gang doesn't give a shit about Carmen and whatever she is doing, and the only one who does care does so because he has a personal stake and issue in it. This is part and parcel of the idea that what a trans person does with their life is really no concern of yours, and making a big deal out of it is more a reflection on you and what you are trying to force than on them. It expounds upon the way that we don't relate with the characters of the gang by further reinforcing the actions and nature of how they interact with the world as something that is evidently narrow-minded and self-focused. Mac has no real good justification or argument or evidence behind his desire to ruin Carmen's life beyond a cruel and vindictive attitude. Something that does reflect the many ways that in the modern political sphere we see laws and bills that target trans people in the most vulnerable places and ways that have no real basis in scientific backing beyond a seeming desire to attack trans people for being who they are in public and to force them back into the closet. And beyond this, we also get to see another side of trans existence, that of having to be the recipient of either awkward or uncomfortable questions, such as when Carmen is interrogated by Charlie and Frank with a series of queries that seem to steamroll over her and interrupt her.
Gay dude's married!
Is my role in this done now?
Any more questions?
No, I think I got it.
Hey, did they really sell your dick to China? No.
This is not to say that trans people are not happy sometimes to answer these questions from cis people, but more that in the show, this is seen to happen when she's doing her gym workout, and includes stuff that has no real purpose except to be highly intrusive into her personal life. As should be evident, when you come to a trans person with questions, you should make sure that they are comfortable actually answering them at the time, and also be respectful when you do so, something that It's Always Sunny helps to make clear by in no way showing Frank or Charlie as being in the right during this scene. We clearly see the lack of interest and desire for them to go away by Carmen, and we are given encouragement to relate to her in the scene, as she has to deal with the machinations of the gang as someone who could not give less of a shit about them. Finally, we have the last episode, which includes Carmen, that of Season 6, Episode 12's D Gives Birth. Now, this is not really a real inclusion of the character, as she's not really a central theme of the episode itself. Instead, she turns up at the end after the gang has spent 30 minutes scrambling to uncover which one of them accidentally slept with Dee and got her pregnant, to collect her child with Nick. It's sort of a big surprise of the episode, as it's revealed that Dee was artificially inseminated with Carmen's frozen sperm so that she could have a kid. And that's it. Now, obviously, the gang keeps calling Carmen the T-word throughout the scene. Not great, and I'm not going to excuse the use of the T-slur. But I've already covered the way in which this is not necessarily a deal-breaker given the larger context of the characters, but I can understand if the consistency of them using that might put off some viewers. This scene is fascinating for two things that really stood out to me from it. The first is that it manages to cover a very real situation that exists for a lot of trans women, namely that it is not possible for them to have kids of their own, and so they often need to find surrogate mothers. It presents this as just something normal and regular that isn't a big deal. In fact, the gang openly, yet again, doesn't really care about it as soon as it stops being something that might personally affect them, with this being their direct reaction after being told this.
See, I can't have kids of my own, and Carmen always wanted a baby.
Great, miracle for you, how wonderful. Dee, you tricked us?
This intense narcissism of the group, something I've mentioned before repeatedly in relation to the characters, is actually a great tool for normalising the things that they are oblivious to, as they are not shown to have any real strong things about any of it because it doesn't really affect them at all. Something that a lot more people could do with realising when it comes to trans rights and trans lives. Then in reality, all these little issues that make up who we are something that really matters to us, but will basically have no impact on them at all. But even more so than that, there was a little talk between the gang afterwards that really got me, when they talk about their opinions around Carmen and Nick being the parents.
I have to admit, this whole thing might be for the best. I mean, those two are going to make great parents. Much better parents than any of us would, don't you think?
Yeah.
That got to me because it very much felt like both a very apparent statement from the gang, recognising that they are in no way fit to raise anything, let alone a child, but it also seems to be a targeted point, that just because someone is trans does not at all change the fact that they can be in a loving relationship that would be a great environment for a child to grow up in. It feels like such a small concession, and it's placed in amongst the normal sort of crass statements we expect from the gang, that you can sort of miss it. But the intention behind it is very sweet, and really does reflect an attitude devoid of explicit anti-trans nature. Even these terrible people can concede this point, and can recognise that transness is by no means a disqualifier for someone, something that would hopefully resonate with an audience, and maybe make them think a little bit more about these attitudes. Sure, the gang expresses open bigotry with regards to words and interpretations of Carmen as a trans woman, but ultimately they don't hold any particular hate or desire to hurt her when it doesn't explicitly benefit them in a material fashion. Not good people, but certainly far from the worst, and at the very least Carmen is consistently shown to be a good person. Now that we've discussed every appearance of Carmen and interpreted how that reflects upon her portrayal as a trans woman, there are some things I want to say with regards to the overall character as a whole throughout the series. Now, it would be remiss of me not to mention the glaring elephant in the room, and that is the fact that Carmen is not played by a trans woman. Now, there are many reasons why this is a sticking point for a lot of trans characters, with the main three being that there are a lot of really great trans actors out there who oftentimes struggle to get accepted for roles due to the subtle array of difficulties that push them out of the industry, and relegated those roles that they would be ideally suited for to cis actors instead. This was especially prevalent back in the days when It's Always Sunny first came out, as it has only really become more of a noticed and talked about issue in the more recent wave of attention being paid to trans issues of the last 5 years. The other issues of a trans character being played by a cis person is that oftentimes we see a trans woman being played as both overtly masculine and ugly, and or being played by a cis man. Both of these are obviously not great things that really buy into both the stereotypes of trans women as being unattractive or gross, and reinforcing the idea that trans women are secretly men in drag by having them being played by literal men in drag. In some way, Carmen thankfully managed to avoid those two issues by being played by a very attractive cis woman. This gives off the impression from the show that trans women are just as capable in the cinematic universe, i.e. if we ignore the fact that it is played by a cis woman and merely treat her as if she was a trans woman totally, of being as attractive as a cis woman, and played by one in a manner that doesn't somehow jar the audience out of watching the show. The audience accepts that a cis woman can totally play a trans woman because they are visually the same, and it's quite a potent idea when we are living in times that really try to create a dividing wedge between those two groups as something that can be clearly separated and told apart. In this way, Carmen really does manage to avoid the greater failings of other trans characters of the same time period. It doesn't hurt the characterization or representation that we see. It would obviously have been nice to see a trans woman get the role, but this truly was the next possible best thing as far as what it says about the character. Beyond that, another aspect that is really focused on with Carmen from the show that I have not heavily touched upon is the way that her genitals are truly put into a hyper-focus, as almost every episode involving her really goes into explicit detail on her penis. While from another show that would be played off as normal or okay behaviour, it is important to note It's Always Sunny managed to avoid this being a deal breaker for the character once again by constantly putting the pressures of this hyper-focus on the gang, pointing out how we see this through the lens of their focus on others, especially that of Mac. And alongside this, Carmen's responses when her penis is brought up are wittily and cleverly written as to diffuse the situation, and to pull away from it just being an endless series of her junk as she pushes back on that characterization. Ultimately, Carmen really does work as a great trans character because the show challenges her with protagonists that adopt the standard attitude that we see from other sitcoms like How I Met Your Mother at the time. We get to see her as a person because she exists in spite of an attitude that was as prevalent at the time, as the show writes her to be better than all of that, and to continue being who she is despite those interactions with these people. She is the visible character that is missing, who is given the time to be herself on the screen in a way that allows the audience to connect to the vibes she puts out. Yeah, I just said vibes. This isn't a university essay. I can say whatever words I want, okay, to convey meaning. You get what I mean. The next point I want to talk to here with relation to It's Always Sunny is the way that the gang is consistently shown throughout the entire series to want to try and seem like good people, if only visually. Especially Dennis, who feels like he has this image to maintain and reputation to uphold so that he doesn't get caught out for any of the terrible things he has actually clearly done. There is, of course, the infamous scene from Season 6, Episode 3, The Gang Buys a Boat, where Dennis talks with Mac about the implication, the idea that if they take a person out onto a boat, then she's going to feel scared and threatened enough to sleep with them. But he makes it very clear that they would never do anything. It's more just the implication. He's a very subtle kind of evil and misogynist and terrible person. He's not openly doing it, he's trying to more under the radar pull that sort of thing off. This is also covered as well in Season 13, Episode 4's Time's Up for the Gang, where Dennis tricks the rest of the gang into a seminar about sexual harassment to show them how they are making his life more dangerous with their inability to cover up their sexual criminality. They're all shown to be terrible sexual assaulters and harassers, and Dennis only wants to point that out because time's up and he's worried that people might be using that to eventually come after him, even though he's very careful and goes into the people he sleeps with phones to basically hack them and make them consent to it afterwards, which is just... Dennis's... Whew. We see how bad Dennis is throughout this series. And the show doesn't hide that or cover that up, because why would you? We need to know he's terrible, because otherwise the jokes on him don't work.
I swear you would be of more use to me if I skinned you and turned your skin into a lampshade. Or fashioned you into a piece of high-end luggage. I can even add you to my collection.
Are you saying that you have a collection of skin luggage?
Of course I'm not, Dee. Don't be ridiculous. Think of the smell. You haven't thought of the smell, you bitch!
And in this vein, the gang is kind of the same in that they try to awkwardly and poorly fix the way that they view minorities, like trans people, but their ignorance in the face of a lack of real care to either talk to trans people or investigate trans issues in a way that would be, much more in line with actual allyship, shows up so consistently, such as in Season 13, Episode 6's The Gang Solves the Bathroom Problem, where the gang effectively becomes a visual representation of the average cis person trying to argue about the bathrooms and reflecting the current conversation around bathroom bills for trans people.
We're not doing that this time, all right? This whole bathroom issue is a simple problem with a simple solution. So why don't we just sit here and let's just figure it out?
This has so many weird points thrown in there from the gang, where they willingly concede from the start that trans people should be able to use whatever bathrooms they identify with because, they're allies, hashtag trans rights are human rights. But after that, it becomes this massive, messy argument, including a bunch of things like Max saying he should get to use someone's bathroom because he's a gay guy and therefore has an equal amount of less privilege, a very It's Always Sunny gang take and something like that, trying to figure out how best to use anything to their own narcissistic advantage, regardless of how poorly they've interpreted it and worked it out.
Majority rules may have worked in medieval times, but we live in a civil society now, and societies are judged on how they treat their most vulnerable. See, we have to give voices to those who have no voice.
He's right.
Shut up, Dee, I'm talking! Women are always... God damn it. Look, what I was saying was that we need to protect those most marginalized, okay? We need to change our attitudes. We need to change our latitudes. And we need to vote for a minorities-only bathroom.
And then Charlie brings up the fact that he should use someone's toilet because when he's on there, he wears drag, and he identifies as a woman while on the toilet, but he doesn't identify a woman at any other time. Something that would come across as one of those classic cruel conservative jokes from any other character. Like if this was put onto like Steven Crowder, it would be like, ah ha ha, I identify as a woman while I'm on the toilet, lol, this is my new video, or whatever. But coming from Charlie, it is sort of something where you think, yeah, that actually is how he feels, and that is true to Charlie. Like, Charlie does probably believe that himself, because Charlie is an odd individual, to say the least.
As a straight man who poops transgender...
You gotta just let that go.
I'll probably stop doing
It's
that.
not a thing.
Stop doing it.
Ultimately, through this tangled web and utter mess of the bathroom bill, where they kind of misinterpret everything and screw everything up and just have no idea what they're talking about, and it's just a bunch of cis people discussing this issue, they come round to conceding that both bathrooms should just be labelled filthy animals, and anyone can use them. A weirdly true interpretation of bathrooms that they reach not through careful deliberation or discussion, but through random terrible arguments and bullshit that they throw at each other to the point that they get sick of it all and just go, whatever, it doesn't matter, we don't care. And in that way, they bring their audience along with them through the comedy and the laughing at the characters, as you see them develop these ideas removed from any of the overtly blatant social discussion that sometimes ruins other similar episodes. Like if any other show was trying to do this, they might make it a PDA on bathroom bills, but with It's Always Sunny, all they really need to do is show you, here are these ridiculous people, and they manage to get to this point because they go through all these inane and stupid issues and cycles, and you kind of end up coming, yeah, screw it, they're probably right. I mean, fuck bathrooms, it doesn't matter, the bathrooms being marked is ridiculous anyway because we're all animals, they're right, whatever. Like, you come along in agreeing with the gang at the end, but you might not agree with how they got there. And this whole sort of thing is, in a way, reflective of this awkward allyship that you see from a lot of people, where they're trying to be better, and they want to be better, and they've learned the right words, and they've learned the right statements, but they don't put them together well, and the intentions behind them are generally pretty terrible. Like, the intentions behind them using what would be described by, I'm sure, a conservative comedian as woke language is generally just how they can use it to benefit themselves. Like, they are reflective of that terrible idea of, like, the worst kind of woke ally, where their allyship is specifically designed to make them seem better, when we know the truth that they're terrible people. But at no point does anyone else kind of buy that from them, which is interesting, is that nobody else, none of the minorities they interact with, buy from them that they're a good ally, because they're clearly shit. They're bad at doing it to the point that nobody takes them seriously. And that in itself, I think, is a fascinating look into how this kind of allyship does sort of out itself very quickly. It's very easy to tell when someone is a bad ally, because it's not very well covered up or well hidden. It just sort of is obvious like this. And in that way, It's Always Sunny does manage to discuss trans issues from a viewpoint that probably does reflect with a lot of the regular viewers that watch the show, who probably aren't very well educated on trans issues, who probably don't know an awful lot, and are probably just as confused and as messed up in that regards as the gang itself. They don't know the right words, they don't know the right statements, they don't know what the hell the right ideas are here. They're sort of muddled and just trying their best not to look bad in front of other people. And That I think is quite fascinating. It's something that we don't see from any other sitcom or other show, is this willingness to present their characters in that kind of light. And it's only available in this show because of the fact that they're already established as bad or terrible people. And all of that brings us around to the final point that I want to make here, and that is how It's Always Sunny is a show that does joking with careful intent and with a clear idea behind the jokes they make. Now, we can obviously point to the fact that the T-slurs probably weren't that great, and in that GQ interview I mentioned earlier, Glenn Howerton does go on further to say that in the future they probably wouldn't do stuff like that, and they have done that clearly in other later seasons, that was a mistake on their part, that in reality what they should have had there was one of the other gang tell them, oh, that's not the right word, bring that down a bit, because they want to showcase that the gang is this awkward ally, right? So having one of them point out, oh, we shouldn't say that word, it's a bad word, is part of that essence. In the same way that they do kind of do when they say the FAGGOT word in later episodes. They have the gang kind of go, we can't say that, stop saying that sort of thing. Like, they visually don't want to seem like bigots, even though they kind of clearly are. And this ties further and further into the way that understanding their characters is very important to the show. And I think other sitcoms fail to do that. They fail to understand that their characters are actually kind of quite often terrible people, that they do terrible things and they act in terrible ways, and they just sort of try to laugh track it away or sweep it under the rug. Whereas It's Always Sunny openly embraces that terribleness. It openly embraces it and then points at it and laughs at it and says, these people are terrible. Laugh at them. They shouldn't be able to be like this. And you know what? They get their comeuppance from it in the end. Karma comes right back around and hits them in the ass for every time they try to do something that's terrible. They are punished for it within the show, and we don't sympathise with them, we don't feel like they're in the right, and that's what I mean by joking with careful intent. The jokes are placed in there, but are placed in there in such a way where the people who wrote them clearly understood that getting the right context and the right angle on those jokes was essential to making them work. The only other show that does something very similar that I've seen is Seinfeld, who also has this kind of idea that the characters are the bad guys, to the point that the very end of the series is the characters being put on trial for all the terrible ways they've screwed up people in the past with their narcissistic interest of themselves.
How everyone who has come into contact with these four individuals has been abused, wronged, deceived, and betrayed. This time, they have gone too far.
That, I think, is quite funny, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia has done many similar things as well, where they're constantly being put on trial by the social peers that exist around them, and they're constantly shown to be lacking. And through that, the sitcom here managed to avoid one of the greatest issues that goes in a lot of other sitcoms, which is that they are generally influential to the audience that watches them. The audience watches them, watches the protagonists, and are told they're good people or that they're right or funny or cool, and in doing so, the audience feels like they want to mimic or copy them. It's Always Sunny makes it clear you shouldn't mimic or copy these people. If you do so, you will deal with the consequences of your actions right down the line almost immediately. And it's very much obvious from the way people around them interact with them that nobody thinks they're cool or okay. They might think of themselves as cool, but in every single series where the gang is like, oh, we're so cool and awesome, let's go out and do something, they always end up discovering that actually they were the sad ones, or that they were the losers, or that everyone thinks of them as these weirdos. They are not thought of by their social peers as cool or good or okay. And in that way, the audience is relating to the social peers around the gang, not with the gang themselves. And that allows the show to get away with an awful lot of funny jokes that target the gang as the protagonists who are shit. And like I said, that's just smart writing, it's just very intelligent writing, and it works very well in their favour for allowing them to explore issues and to give side characters from minorities a chance to really present themselves in ways that aren't stereotypical and let them defend themselves from the gang, because that's part of the modus operandi of the series. The side characters need to be better and need to be given a chance to make the gang look stupid, because that's part of how the show works. So that's why I believe that It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is actually a show that has some of the best trans representation I've seen ever. It manages to put in a trans character and put in trans issues without making them seem hollow or seem like they're just a token representation. They're given the chance to really present themselves and to argue for themselves through the lens of us seeing these shitty characters interact with them and fail miserably. The bigotry is shown to be in the wrong, and the trans character is shown to be doing their best to live their own life and to be strong enough to fight back against when they are challenged by the shitty people from the gang. The transposition is really good, and Carmen, even though she deals with T-slurs, which yet again, I'm not going to excuse the T-slurs, I'm not going to say that they're okay or good, but in the context of the show, they are an understandable inclusion because T-slurs are a common usage. Look at How I Met Your Mother. Those sitcom protagonists were throwing out T-slurs like there was no tomorrow, and they were the good guys. So, seeing people who are supposed to be the bad guys throwing them out really does give hopefully an indication to the people viewing it that that's not okay. And if you like what I've said here and you like what I've thought about, or maybe you think that this was well written, then please consider giving this a like, share, subscribe, and a comment. Especially comment if you have some insight on other things that I might have missed, or if you want me to do another TV series or a movie or something that has transportation in it. I really enjoy doing these kind of videos, so that's always very helpful to me. Other than that, if you also really want to support me, then you can go below the sponsorship link. Please click on the sponsorship link. It's very helpful. You know, it helps to give sponsors the idea that I am a reliable source of getting them clicks, which will hopefully get more sponsors to me, which I would like. But if you also want to support me directly, you can go to my Patreon, which is below that link, and you can click on that and you can just directly give me money, which will be very helpful and very useful, because money is essential for not dying. That might be a surprise for you there. Just saying. But with all that out of the way, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a great day.